Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host of my new podcast, Pause and Rewind. I'll be chatting to changemakers, thought leaders, and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now. But how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now. Because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes, and what makes our guests tick. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hello and welcome to this episode of Pause and Rewind. It's my second episode for 2025, and with it being February, LGBT History Month is underway. So I've got the perfect guest lined up. It is the one and only Joseph Galliano-Doig MBE, I'll have you know. Joe is the founder of Queer Britain, the nation's first LGBTQ plus museum. Anyone who knows me knows how much I love Queer Britain. In the early days of fundraising, I volunteered for Queer Britain at various events, supported them with online activity during COVID. And it's just a place that I love to go to. I love popping there on an afternoon. It is a wonderful place. So, first up, if you haven't been, why not get yourself there? It's such a gorgeous space celebrating our rich queer history. But I was really excited to get to know Joe more during this conversation. Joe is a friend of mine, as I've said, but I was excited to dive into his origin story. We know about Joe and, founding Queer Britain. I had the pleasure of seeing him given an honorary graduate degree from London South Bank University, where I worked, to recognise his work. And obviously, he received his MBE and love seeing him shine, but really excited to dive into that origin story and hear about little Joe. You've got those big career moments of Queer Britain and editor of Gay Times. But let's find out more about him. This was such a fun episode to record. Please take care of yourself as always. We do cover some challenging topics, but yeah, let's get into it. Enjoy it and let me know what you think. Cheers. Hey Joe, it is so good to see you. Welcome to Pause and Rewind.
Hello, Neil. Pleasure to see you too. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. It is absolutely brilliant to have you here. As you know, huge fan of you, your work, everything you've achieved with Queer Britain, and yeah, been wanting to have you on for a while. So delighted to.
Well, vice versa, Neil, and it's been lovely to have you involved in the museum. It's been lovely. It's through that I've got to know you,
Yes.
and I'm a huge fan of yours as well. So,
Thank you so much for bit of mutual love going on. I always start with a really big question, and that is, what does the world look like for Joseph Galliano-Doig right now?
it looks satisfied and brilliantly unformed. So I've just in fact, yesterday was the last formal day as the employee of Queer Britain. Where I've
Okay.
spent the last 7 or 8 years getting the museum into a space where it's fit enough to be able to pass on to a successor so that somebody else can go and have a go on it. And I'm starting to develop a consultancy offer. And I'm also, where a job looks really, really interesting, I'm having a look, but more interested in doing sort of consultancy work.
That's so exciting. I mean, definitely a time to pivot and flex.
Yeah.
How are you feeling
Oh, and anyway,
about?
that's just, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you as well. That's just work, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
Like,
true.
like that's not the full nature of that question. I'm also 22 years into a really beautiful relationship, which
A
is
lovely mark.
loving and supporting. I have a lovely family, and I've just had a really good Christmas and New Year, and
Fantastic.
I'm sitting in my bedroom.
Well, it's looking very cozy too. Yeah, of course. We often focus on the when we talk about these things, we often focus on our professional output, right? But actually, there's such a tendency to overlook the our personal lives and personal happiness. So really grateful for you for sharing. It is a huge moment of pivot and flex for you, right?
Yeah.
And yourself, you and Mark as well, with kind of like deciding to take the step down from Queer Britain, which has been your life, and I know how all-consuming it has been.
It really has.
It
It
really
really
has.
has.
How are you feeling about it? Because I know we've had a few conversations where it's been kind of like, a little bit of sadness, a little bit of kind of trepidation.
Yeah.
I mean, things have evolved since those conversations with consultancy ideas.
Yes, and it has, you're absolutely right. It's been a mixture of, it's been a real mixture of emotions because I think when you're a founder, it's more than just a job. It's something that's an expression of your sort of deepest needs, and it's also something that becomes so tied up in your identity that it can be hard to work out where you end and where the thing begins. And actually, funnily enough, I was having I had a dinner last night with a friend, Mike, who has written a very good book called Founder Therapy, who developed his own business and then exited, and he has a whole book about the chunks that being a founder takes out of you, and also full of advice for how to do that in a way that's not going to grind you into powder. So it's for me it's a mixture of excitement. There is I'm always excited by an unwritten future, but I'm also a bit um, sad to have let my baby go. But I'm also very proud that I did what I set out to do, including when I first started off on this journey. I remember saying to my mentor Emma, I remember saying to her, I want to set this charity up, I want to set this museum up, but I need to know when it's the right time to step down because I've worked for people with founders syndrome before, and
Mhm.
I've seen the toxic effects that has on people, on organizations, and then boards then have to prise their fingers off of it. And I always swore I didn't want to be that person. And so to have been able to do a loving, responsible handover at a point where the board was sort of still wanting me to be a part of it is immensely gratifying. And they made me director emeritus as well, which was very nice.
They have, and I love that you're still going to be such a huge part of it because you are the soul of Queer Britain, and I know that you'll credit other people with it as well, and I know that it's taken a whole team, and I'm really grateful for the opportunities that I've had to be involved. But I thought it was beautiful that you are director emeritus. I think it's absolutely amazing. This podcast is kind of like it's a look at people's origin stories and getting to know the people beyond what we know of them now.
Yeah.
But it's also a resource for those people that are thinking about their careers and thinking about moments of pivot and flex and learning lessons. Are you happy to share and feel free not
Mhm.
to? What made you feel that was the moment to
The
step away?
moment to
Step
step
away.
away.
How
Um,
did you know?
I think there was a number of issues. I mean, first of all, I'd always said I want to get it open, I want to get it set up, and then I want to hand it to somebody. So I'd always said that from the beginning.
Mhm.
Um, I think the other thing is that I think after pushing so hard for such a long time, so it was 7 or 8 years, 7 years as a charity, and I was probably working on it for about 8 years overall. And working at that startup pace for such a long time, it's exhausting.
Yep.
It's exhilarating and it's exhausting, and I think at that point as well, you know, I think I'd realised that I'd maybe um, lost sight of my relationship. I'd lost sight of a lot of other kind of valuable things in my life, where everything, my social life, my work life, everything in my relationship was about the charity.
Mm.
And actually, I think it got to a point where you go, actually, I need to get a little bit of myself back.
Yep.
and I'm 53, I think. 50. Oh God, I'm at that age where you start going, how old am I? I think I'm 53. And that I think there's only I've kind of reinvented myself every sort of decade in my life, more or less. And I'm aware that career-wise, there's only so many reinventions I have left. So time to embrace the next one.
And what a career it's been. I'm so excited for to hear more about the consultancy and to see where that goes. Um, do you have like a vision or a mission at present as to where your head's at with it?
Yeah, I want to be look, there's the straightforward stuff, which is
Yep.
the consultancy around fundraising strategies,
Yeah.
business strategies. There's that kind of thing where you can bring that knowledge and experience that you've gained actually over the last sort of 20 years to lift up sector partners. But I think the other thing is what I've always really, really enjoyed is lifting up talented, lovely people. And there are some artists I'd like to work with who I think we can lift their work up and then help them achieve greater aims. I don't want to go too much into
Yeah,
the
no.
details right now because I'm strategizing right now. Um, there, I've always been somebody who really loves connecting people who are going to enjoy each other and work well with each other and lift each other up and create more fabulous work as a result. And I just love me a good project.
I mean, you do.
I really do. I really do.
Well, the way that you lift other people up and you shine a spotlight on their work is evident through everything from the way you work with volunteers, including myself, and the way we've kind of maintained a relationship beyond that, through to the amazing kind of archivists and historians and artists you've worked with.
Yeah, but and thank you, that's very generous. But what you don't realize, or what you may not realize, is that, it's not a one-way thing.
No, of
And
course.
when I can remember actually, we did an event at it was Madame Two Swords, and
I think that was my first one.
it was, and you gave me something very precious in that night, which is that I'd been running around trying to just make everything work, and I was just in the weeds with everything, and actually full of anxiety for
Mm.
how is this thing going to work tonight. Yet again, I'm in a frontier where I've never done this thing before, and I
It
feel
was
like
early days, right?
it was very early days, and I feel like everything's on me, and I think we were fiddling around with iPads,
Card machines.
card machines, and things, and you that's right, yeah. And you said one of the best things anyone in this project, anyone could say is you just looked at me and you just was like, "What are you doing here? Come on, I've got this. You don't need to worry about this. You go down there and go and talk to people and go and circulate and do your thing. I will look after this." I was just like, "Oh, thank you, Neil. Thank you, Neil."
Well, it's I think that delegating and learning to let go is definitely a skill that we all need to learn.
And
And I
it's a
think
tough
it's
one.
yeah, it's a tough one. And trusting people to do their thing as well. And I imagine you've had a lot of that to do with undertaking such a huge thing like Queer Britain. So gay times,
Yeah.
Queer Britain. Let's see what's next. I'm
Yeah, let's
super
see.
excited. For now, Joe, I'm so excited to dive into your origin story. Are you ready to pause and rewind?
I can absolutely I'll put my seatbelt on.
Here we go. Let's do this. Take me back. Tell me all about little Joe.
Oh, well, so little Joe was born in 1971, child of the 70s. Would that make me a child of the 80s or a child of the 70s? I'm not sure.
Both.
Born into a single parent family, just me, my mum, and my brother living upstairs at my grandfather's house in southwest London. It was very loving. My mother's lovely, very, it was always a loving household, but it was also one where it was very disrupted. Um, and not a lot of money to not a lot of money to rub round. Rub round? Do you rub money round? Don't know if that's the right phrase.
Can do.
Um, and that certainly it left its strengths, but it also left its scars. And I think that probably a lot of the need to try and comfort other people or lift other people up. I think a lot of it has that base, has a base down there, and and I can see as well that it all stretches back to my mother losing her mother at 16, and her having children then almost immediately, and it doesn't take an awful lot to join the dots to see where the trauma has passed down the
Hmm.
family and what some of the impacts of that may have been. Um, so that was the very early days, and then um, my mother remarried when I was I think 11 or 12, with my stepfather, who she's still happily married with. And I think when Roger came along, that was the figure that sort of really brought some stability into our lives. Um, and yeah, I've got a range of siblings. So I've got an older brother who I love very much, who has his um, lovely wife and lovely nephews, and I have a younger brother who's an amazing photographer and world-class climber. I've got a brilliant two brilliant sisters as well. So one is in Australia and one's in Bristol, in Bristol.
A nice big family. Within that, what was perhaps one of the favorite anecdotes that someone in your family has told you about yourself when you were little?
I think one of the things that always makes me laugh, and my mum, my mum's mentioned this a few times over the years, was between my brother and I, the first time the different response that we had when we first saw the sea.
Okay.
And my brother sort of, he saw it, he ran away from it and terrified, and I just looked at it and I just dropped everything and just ran straight into it with absolute terrified them. And I think that's probably been pretty typical for how I've lived my life, which is just like, see a big thing, run at it, run at it, giggling and wondering what's going to happen.
Fuck everything else. Just
Yeah,
go for it.
exactly. Yeah,
I love
yeah.
it. I love it. I could definitely see that in you now. Um, what were you like at school?
What was I like at school? Very well behaved.
Okay.
Like ridiculously well behaved. I remember my mum at one point saying, she she took me to one side and she said, you do know you can be naughty sometimes. She said, I will have to tell you off, but you can be naughty sometimes. Which I remember finding a bit, it created a little chink of cognitive dissonance. It
Of
was like,
course.
well, I only want to be naughty if there's something I really want to like. I don't want to be naughty for the sake of it. And then I remember spending a short while thinking, well, how can I, what can I do to be naughty?
Do you remember what you did?
No, I didn't. I think I just ruminated on it for a day or two and then carried on business as usual. I always had a deep love of language. That probably was the key thing. So I was always very good with like English literature, the humanities. I struggled more with maths and um, but I was also but also, as well as being quite an uh, weirdly happy-go-lucky but anxious. So an anxious optimist, I think, is probably how I would have described my personality type. Um, and um, I loved I always loved a challenge. I always loved it when somebody told me that I wasn't going to be very good at something. So I remember like a sports day when I was, oh my God, I must have been 7, and seeing everybody setting up for the 100-meter dash, and suddenly thinking, I'd really like to do that. And saying to my teacher, can I join this race? And she was just like, no, don't be ridiculous. She said, you haven't put any practice in, and everybody else has been practicing for this, and you haven't been. I was like, and she said, you'll never win. Well, that's red rag. That's red rag to a bull. I didn't even have my kit, and I remember like stripping down to my underpants and just being like, she's told me I'm never going to win. I'll show her, and then winning.
Oh wow.
Um, and but also kind of diligent. I remember taking my teacher, my physics teacher, to which I'd struggled with, and when I was about 15, I'd always struggled with it, but asking him for extra lessons and spending lunch times with him, and him, bless him, giving up some lunch times and setting me some test questions, and then getting a grade 1 CSE, which was the exam structures at the time, which again was a sort of a reflection of that kind of grit your teeth and I'm going to make this thing work
Yeah.
because I've been told that I can't do this.
Where do you think the anxious optimism came from, and what was your kind of sense of the world in your mind with that?
I think it's that sense that sort of everything could go away at any moment,
Mm.
or you could find yourself kind of at the center of some sort of um, disruption that at any moment. Um, and again, I mean, I think that comes back to the sort of the child, partly childhood stuff, partly
Mm.
just temperament, I think, as well.
Yeah.
You
Is it
know,
something you carry with you now?
yeah, I think so. I think so to a degree. Um, definitely still an optimist, um, but also definitely still carry that anxiety with me as well. And it's something, it's something I have to manage. Um, that sense of, whether are you enough? Are you good enough? Um, what if you don't manage to pull this off? So yeah, it's definitely something that I carry with me. Here is something. Here is what I was going to talk about. Um, One of the defining moments of my school days. One of the defining moments of my school days was I had been put in because in my secondary school, if you were in one banded of ability set, they put you in that set across all of your subjects. And because I was terrible with maths, and I chatted a lot, and I was I couldn't stop chatting. Um, I was put in low sets for everything. I was kind of in the third or fourth set, ability wise. And then we had a trip with my geography class to the science museum. I remember standing in front of a model of the planets, all laid out, all the planets laid out from the sun to Pluto at the time. And I stood there with two of my geography teachers, and I was just sort of staring, lost in this, in amazement at this model, and was asking a few questions of the geography teachers, and sharing a few of my thoughts about the wonder of this, just how incredible this thing was. And I didn't give it any second thoughts until I got called out. A week later, I got pulled out of the geography class by one of the teachers, and I remember her sort of like putting her arm on my shoulder, and she just said, "I think there's been a terrible mistake about what bands you've been put in."
Hmm.
And after that, they moved me to the top sets for everything except for maths. which was unusual. And that for me felt like one of the most validating moments of my childhood, I think. So I thank those teachers. I thank the Science Museum.
Yeah. I
Um,
was there on Monday. Um,
great, great, love
that's
it.
do you think that made a massive difference to your attainment, achievements, whatever,
Self-esteem,
everything? Right.
yeah, enormously. And actually, it's funny. Just I haven't thought about that for a long time, and
Mm.
just telling you that, just sharing that with you now, and I can feel myself welling up thinking about it,
Yeah.
and I can feel that kind of emotional hand around my heart. And I think it's really hard to underestimate what an impact that how many of those conversations, how many of those moments from when we're
Yeah.
13, 14.
At that age as well, and that
Yeah.
very early experience of seeing of feeling seen.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
being seen. Yeah,
Yeah.
but also, and I think it's funny because it's a message that and I can connect these dots as we're
Mm.
speaking. But it's funny because when I think about the work at Gay Times, when I think about the books that I edited, the Dear Me, a Letter to My 16-Year-Old Self books, when I think about what was driving some of the work with the museum, um, the message overall that I've tried to kind of seed to other people, to the people around me, the people who've engaged with the work that I've done in it, is you are okay. You're not
Yeah.
as stupid as you think you are. You're not
Yeah.
as ugly as you think you are. You've absorbed lies that people who didn't necessarily have your best
Mm.
interests at heart, and you've held those as your own. But you don't have to because you're you're beautiful. You're not stupid. You're as bright as you are. You
Yeah.
deserve to have your place. You deserve to be seen.
I love that. And this podcast does bring so many things together without even realizing it. But again, not just being seen actually, to have people have faith in you. You
Yeah.
know, the conversations that would have happened in the background to make that happen. And throughout your career, those opportunities and what you've achieved, as you've said, is because people have seen you and people have celebrated and believed in you.
Yeah, and that's completely true. And I think that the flip side of that, which I think is really important, which is vital actually, is it's not enough to be seen.
Mm.
We've got to see other people, and we've got to love and respect them, and make sure that other people feel held and feel seen
Yes. Yeah.
as
And
well.
take action
And
and
to
take
take
and
and to take
celebrate
action for
them.
that,
Yeah.
because otherwise, if it is simply the act
Yeah.
of being seen, well, that's a selfish act.
Yeah.
But actually, if you can broaden that into like, look, this is who I am. Let me see who you are. I
Yeah.
see who you are. Then that becomes something that's much more mutual and much more about community. And um, yeah, we just need more of that.
Yeah. 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 The seeing, the celebrating, the action, the amplifying, all of those different things.
Exactly, exactly.
Let's move on to your teenage years. For many of us, particularly as queer people, this
Mm.
can be a challenging time, realizations, first heartbreak, changing in our bodies. What does this look and feel like for teenage Joe?
Um, it was very inward looking. It was depressed and distressed.
Okay.
Um,
Bit of a shift.
yeah, it was that awareness of being gay. Um, there was that kind of sense of, and this is by no means an unusual experience, but it was that sense of, I think I first saw a statistic at that age that said that there was something like, I think it said 5% of the population were likely to be um, LGBT. I don't think they said LGBT back then, but um, and I remember this very strong sense of isolation and looking around my classrooms and thinking, okay, that means that somebody in here is probably gay. Somebody in this room is, and then that heart sinking with that, oh fuck, it's me, isn't
Yeah.
it? And then that kind of like really, yes, there's that strong urge to find a space where you can share that information with
Mm.
somebody. Um, there's that, you develop that the sideways discreet glance at the people that you're crushing on, where you're trying not to be seen to be seen, not trying not to be seen to be looking, but all you want to do is just, oh, I just want to bathe in that beautiful face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So it was tough.
but no tougher than anybody than for anybody else.
Yeah.
Um, and when I was 18, so I'd sort of, it's funny because I first came out to my mother and my stepdad when I was 14 or 15, I think 15.
Which is quite young.
Yeah, but then I panicked and then withdrew the statement
Okay.
the next day. But they thought it was a really good idea to send me on a National Trust working holiday
Okay.
because they thought um, lots of, some hard work and get outside in the sun and meet some girls. And when I when I was there was a boy there, Brian, his name was Brian with a Y. I carried his where he'd scribbled his address down. I carried in my wallet for years and stuck in the back of my diary. Um, and I remember just kind of like seeing this guy, getting friendly with this guy who I just thought was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life, and um, coming back from that and going upstairs and putting my suitcase down after I'd got back home and just sitting on my bed and just being like heartbroken and lovelorn, that I probably wouldn't see him again. And um, the irony being that the very thing that they thought was going to um, straighten me up was the thing
Cemented
that
it.
absolutely confirmed to me that who I was, um, which is hilarious.
Did you ever get in touch with Brian
No,
again?
but I did something funny, which was that we'd had a group photograph taken, and his family were part of the American uh, Air Force, and so it was a difficult person to actually reconnect with because they were moving all over the place. But I wrote to the person who'd run the event, who'd run the weekend of the week, and asked if she could send me the photograph that had been taken of everybody. And the hilarious thing is, and I've still got this photograph in my memory box here. When the photograph arrived, there's kind of like 30 of us kids in it, and I'm standing in the back row, and Brian is standing in the back row next to me. He's looking forward to the camera, and you can't see my face because my face is turned looking at his.
Oh, that's so cute. That's so cute.
I
We're gonna
wonder if
get
he ever knew. I wonder if he ever knew. I wrote some terrible poems about him.
wow. I mean, I definitely want to see the photo at some point, and if
Yeah, I'll dig it out.
and I'm sure those poems will they ever see the light of day?
Uh, well, they're still sitting in my memory box, and
We'll
that's
see.
exactly where they should stay.
What happens next? What happens next for you after, after coming to terms with kind of being gay and post school? What did you want to do? What was the plan?
Well, I went to Middlesex Polytechnic as it was then, and I did an art history and communication studies degree. It was a very very late 80s kind of early media style degree.
Was it in
Uh,
Trent Park up then?
It was
Back
at
then?
Trent Park. Yes, it
Love
was at
Trent
Trent
Park.
Park. Yeah, great. Yeah, I do too. A really, really beautiful, beautiful building. Fascinating history
Amazing.
connected with it. So a real privilege of a place to go to college at. So I spent 3 years at Trent Park, in fact. And not very many people would know that. That's
Yeah, I spent a lot of time at my friend's university hanging out. So
oh, so he was at well, they were
my
at
friend Genevieve was at Middlesex, and we used to hang out at
ah,
her halls, and I spent quite a bit of time up at
oh, at the
Trent Park.
halls in Trent Park.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh, amazing! Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It's
great,
good fun.
great. Yeah. Um, but again, kind of like I think you ask kids what they want to do for with their lives, and I'd just be like, I didn't even know what jobs existed.
Yeah,
How am I?
yeah,
How on earth? I didn't know what jobs existed. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how the world worked. Very naive, very inexperienced, very wet behind the ears. How are you meant to make those kind of
mm,
decisions?
yeah.
Um, so I would say that then, I spent a lot of my 20s kind of um, yeah, a bit lost really. A lot of the 90s kind of a bit lost. Worked in retail, sold a bit of advertising, um, signed on for a bit, became a sound engineer, worked in small recording studios, and um, um, had a job at Teletext doing
I love that.
doing holiday adverts in eight bit holiday adverts. So really a bit all over the place.
Yes.
Um, and a bit lost. And the funny thing was that it was only really when I approached 30, um, and I had I probably had a little bit of a little bit of what we might think of as a breakdown, where I'd put together I'd understood what my childhood story was for the first time, and I
Okay.
don't want to go too deeply into the nuts and bolts of that right now, but and I got gripped by a very sort of I had some counselling, and as a result of just amazing, really, just eight sessions, and um, I got exactly what I needed out of it, and I kind of took control of that by going, right, I'm going to use this to understand what my story is, and I had I sort of pieced together really, I think it was the things that I was talking about earlier about the impact that the loss of my grandmother had on my family, and what the fallout from that had been, and how that had impacted on me. And I thought about the people who passed through my lives who maybe didn't have my best interests at heart, and the kind of damage that had caused. And I got gripped by this very sort of like white hot, um, part anger, part determination, part excitement, and I drew this very almost tangible, visible line in the sand where I just kind of went, right, this is where it stops. This
Okay.
is where it stops. And at that point, I kicked in my job at Teletext. I took a 3-month postgraduate certificate in journalism. At the end of that, I had a work experience at Gay Times magazine. After that, I went back after I finished my work experience. I went and pitched 4 ideas to the editor. She commissioned 3. Um, I carried on doing that. I was writing about 8 features for Gay Times. Within 18 months, I was writing almost all of the features in the magazine. Then they made me deputy editor, and then 2 years after that, they made me editor.
Amazing.
Then I started publishing books. Then a whole series of things that led to the museum.
Yeah.
So the museum was really for me um, almost like the most ambitious, the most immaculate expression of at the end of that
Mm.
journey that had started with that white hot line in the sand,
Yes.
and then this accelerated kind of sense. I remember thinking, like, not only do I um not only do I walk away from all of the damage that's been done in the past,
Yeah.
but I am going to fucking well get back to where I should have been
Yes.
if I hadn't had those influences earlier.
Yeah. You described it as this is where it stops, but
Yeah.
actually it
This is
was
where it
also this is
starts.
where it starts as well. What a beautiful kind of
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
moment of reflection. It goes to show uh not only the importance of recognizing that not all careers are linear,
Yeah.
but also the importance of therapy and in reframing our own narratives.
And what was so beautiful as well was that the relationship that I'm in, so with Mark, and I met him around that time,
Okay.
and he was against the type that I'd always gone for. I'd always gone for people who confirmed the worst things I felt about myself, or I'd often gone for people who confirmed
Mm,
the worst things I felt about
yeah.
myself. And Mark was very different. He was, just a very lovely,
Yeah.
person, and not spiky like other people I'd been with, um, and it felt like he was the sort of the reward at the end of that um, struggle.
For anyone listening, Mark is absolutely amazing, by the way, and absolutely a beautiful human,
Hmm. I agree with the issue.
of course. With this in mind, it seems a perfect segue to the next section, which is what lessons have you learned along the way?
I would say that probably the most important that I've felt for myself, and one of the sort of terrors that always gripped me, was that I I was scared that I might end up as an old person that was bitter about the things that he hadn't done and um, hadn't tried. And I was always very happy to fail at something, but I was always terrified by the idea that I wouldn't have given something an enthusiastic go.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be that person who was going to go, oh, it's too difficult. Or I think an example of this, I'm a very poor guitar player.
Okay.
But I love it, and I songwrite for myself, and it's like something that, and I also became a sound engineer in the end of the 90s. And I think the main thing was that I'd had this feeling of like, oh, I wish I was the sort of person who was
Yeah.
involved in music or was involved in the music industry. And then I had this moment where I went, well, if I did it, then I would be the sort of person who.
Mm.
And I think that it's that there's we don't have to be stuck as one thing.
Yeah.
We can be something else.
Yeah.
And actually, sometimes we have to think about the fact that life is much more interesting lived as a verb than a noun.
Oh, mic drop moment.
That's good. I just made that up, just there on the spot.
Right. It
But it is
came
it,
up.
but it's a bit like, when you think about who we are the things that we do to a large degree. And so if we change the things we do, then we'll be that thing. And it's the same way that I think love works, is that it's much more helpful to think about love as a verb.
Mm.
So, you know, I am going to love you. It's not, here is some love. It's, I am going to love you. That's an active decision.
Yeah.
So it's a verb. And I think that's a much more powerful way to live.
We're hearing the writer coming through right now. It's
Are you
beautiful.
hearing the pretentious
I'm
twat?
here. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Get the guitar out.
Yeah, you know what? You don't want to hear it.
But the
My
fact that
neighbors, my neighbors probably don't agree that I'm a musician.
but the thing is, I'm a hopeless swimmer, right? I'm hopeless. My technique is absolutely appalling, but I really bloody enjoy it, and I don't
Yeah.
let it stop me. And I think that I think that it's that you can really enjoy it and love doing something without being an absolute expert at it. And I think we can apply that to life as well.
I think that, yeah, and you're absolutely right, because I think the thing that was quite funny was that when I actually after I was a sound engineer, I put the guitar down for a long time because it just
Mm.
made me sad, because I felt like I hadn't really got to where I thought I'd get to with that. Very hard to do that when you start doing it in your late 20s, but the thing that was really wonderful was that when I started the museum, started that project, it was when I really enthusiastically picked the guitar up again, started songwriting for myself again. And I realized that the thing that was really key to it was that all of the other things I was trying to achieve professionally have had were had a lot of jeopardy to them.
Mm.
And I was trying to achieve something. And but I could take this thing and go, do you know what? It doesn't, I'm doing this for myself, and I'm doing it. The pleasure is in the activity. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't matter if it's crap. It's not for anybody else. It's just for me
Yeah.
to sit here enjoying it and getting lost in it. And it's not for anybody else. It's just for me, and there's
Yes.
no jeopardy to it. So why not just enjoy something where you don't have to achieve something?
Yes. Yeah, because we're constantly judging ourselves and measuring ourselves and others by achievements
Yeah,
without
exactly.
focusing on that. Goes back to what we were saying at the very beginning. There's just a tendency to focus on our professional output, but less about the joy and having conversations like this and getting to
Yeah,
know
exactly.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, moving on from lessons that have shaped you the most, and I'd love to know who's a person who you think has shaped you the most.
I mean, I know that the person through life who I've always sort of looked up to the most has been my older brother. Um, has always been the person I've looked to try and please, and whose attention I've always kind of tried to get. And he's probably his person who's shaped my my music, my the music I love, my sense of humor, my he's the person I've always tried to perform for. Um, then there were other, then there's people like it's funny, the singer-songwriter Tom Robinson has been a huge impact on my life. So when I was 14, I first heard the song "Glad to Be Gay,"
Okay.
and it. In fact, funnily enough, I borrowed a cassette off my brother to go and do my paper round, and I've been really enjoying it. And I've been bopping along to it as I was shoving a Daily Mail through people's through
Bins.
people's through people's front door hate holes. And when the song "Glad to Be Gay" came on, I remember, like, I can almost literally visualize standing with one foot on the pavement, one foot off the pavement, and my heart racing, frozen, stuck still to the ground, um, with this message that, like, this sort of bitterly ironic message that, not only maybe are you okay for being gay, but maybe you've got a right to be angry for the way that our communities, our people have been treated over the years. Um, One of the great things that then was that, so I became a really passionate fan of his music in all its various iterations. Um, when I was when I did a sound engineering course in my late 20s, I wrote to him to find out, sort of see if I could see what sort of gear he was working on. Um, was lucky enough that he responded and invited me over, and we had an afternoon sitting, drinking tea and talking about his studio, and became firm friends after that. Um, and as you know, I'm really, it's very precious when somebody's hero becomes your friend, and
Yeah.
not only do they not disappoint you, but they're just as magnificent and funny. And then they split into two people. You have the the Tom that I see on stage and I'm starstruck by, and then the the loving man that's folded you into his family and has been has supported you in your um, writing and in your uh, has cheerled for you and is still a part of what you do. And in fact, actually, we had an event to pass on to the new director, and it was just so great to have him in the room there with his lovely wife. And so, yeah, I would say Tom's been a one of the biggest influences on my life.
Amazing. Well,
It is
thank you.
amazing. It is
Yeah,
amazing, actually. Yeah.
yeah. There's so many people. It's actually hard to. I should think that with this question, it's such a hard one because it's so hard to whittle it down to just kind of one or two people.
It is, and it's it's those are the tip of the iceberg.
Yes, of course.
Um, but if I started, I don't know where I'd stop.
Yeah, Oscar's speech. Does happiness
Yeah.
does happiness and success look and feel how you thought it would?
What does what does success mean?
Yeah.
Because that's such a broad word, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, I think some people might think about that. Is that financial success? Is that stability? Is that success in your relationships? Is it career success? Is it success in understanding who you are and being able to come to terms with that?
Yeah.
And is it doing podcasts and having, it always seems strange to me that people want to hear what I have to say.
They do. I guess
But
breaking it down.
sorry, but do you see what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
it's too abstract.
it's so abstract. Yeah. I guess it's if you're measuring it against what you thought it would be. At the beginning, are you where you thought you would be? Or also, maybe do you feel successful? Do you feel happy?
I think the thing is that happiness is something that is a moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, Contentment, I think, is a more stable kind of
Stable but underrated.
stable but underrated, and probably not something I've ever really experienced. So I've had happiness, and I would say that overall I'm a happy person now. Um, but it's delicate.
Yeah.
Um, what was the other part of the question? Success and does
Success, does happiness and success look and feel how you thought it would?
Oh, and certainly my life doesn't look anything like I imagined it would do when I was a
No.
kid. I mean, nothing. Yeah. But back at the age where if you think about the 80s, I thought it was estate agents look glamorous. I mean, I didn't know what was what was good and what was bad. It was like
That's very true. I think our younger selves have a lot to answer for in terms of what they perceive.
but they do. But we ask a lot of them as well.
We do. My final question for this section is, looking back, what are you most proud of to date?
I would say that I'm most proud of um, some of the people that I brought around the table to run the museum. I'm so proud of seeing how some of those people have grown and been loving and supportive, and really smart, well-intended. Um, I look at well, actually, in fact, I look at Lynn,
Yeah.
who I met you through. I look at Mark. I look at Max. I look at the group of people. I could go on, and I think I'm so proud of having created something where there's really super lovely, super smart people around the table who have made massive leaps of faith into to support something that I've been running around trying to make happen, and who
Yeah.
I can see how their lives are different as a result. And some of those
Yeah.
people have kind of blossomed as a result of being a part of this thing. That makes me very proud. And I also, when when I kind of went through the guest book and you see the visitor responses, how that museum has been received. And it's funny actually. I had I had to make a short film for Meta to say thank you for some sponsorship they've given us. And I thought that rather than, and this is one of the last things I did before I stepped down, and I thought, right, rather than just me say thank you and tell them how we're spending the money, I'm going to go and find something nice from the guest books, from the visitors' books, and I'm going to read them those. And the museum was closed, and I took about 4 or 5 of these visitors' books onto my lap, and I went and sat on the floor in the middle of the museum, and to try and find something nice
Mm.
to say. 2 hours later, I'm a mess of
I can imagine.
a mess because it's just been like page after page after page of people pouring their hearts out about how grateful they are that the museum's there, about how they feel seen, about how they feel validated, about how they understand their children better, about how they love their parents more, about how they feel like seen.
Mm.
And I didn't come across a single comment that punctured that or that had a different type of sentiment. And that was brilliantly exhausting, very, very gratifying. Um, but I think that also, if I pull back as well to another level, and I think about how unlikely it was given the trauma of childhood, and the sort of role models we did and didn't have. Um, I'm really proud of having a loving, successful, nearly quarter century relationship with somebody I adore.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel like all of those people, when you saw that sea, all of those people retrospectively threw everything else up in the air and ran towards it with you as well.
It did feel like that.
It did, yeah. The House of Happiness is London's ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza. We're led and delivered but created for all, whether teetotal, sober curious, or just taking a booze snooze. We love a day rave, and on a Saturday afternoon you can expect banging house tunes, DJs on decks, dancers on podiums, and a fully stocked alcohol-free bar. Flamboyant, bold, with a glitter station to boot. We're all about safe, inclusive fun, and we even have a pre-meet so that you can make new sober buddies before you hit the dance floor. Grab your tickets from Instagram now at House of Happiness Official, and we'll see you on the dance floor. Are you ready for some quickfire questions?
Yeah, go on then, go on.
Let's do it. What album, book, or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
Well, I can tell you that my favorite album of all time is Paul and Linda McCartney's Ram from 1971. And it's eccentric. It's got too many ideas. It contains too many ideas and movements to be able to wrestle itself into a shape. It sounds like it's going to fall apart at any minute. It's full of love. It's full of little bruised moments, full of mad acts of whimsy, and it's very sort of home hewn, and it's the sound of a relationship really cementing itself, so full of love and humor. So that would be, I wouldn't actually the only other I see, this is the trouble with you ask a music fan,
It's tough.
and this could be a whole new section because I mean the other album would have been Tom Robinson Band's Power in the Darkness, which is a very, very angry screed against fascism. with really good guitars and great lyrics. Very angry album. Um, I could go on. I'm not.
We'll leave it there. We'll leave it at
Yeah.
those two. Do you want to throw in a book and a movie?
Yeah, My Own Private Idaho.
Oh my gosh, what a
Um,
film.
yeah, I remember being very moved by the fact that at the campfire scene where Keanu Reeves is cradling River Phoenix, and River Phoenix is like, "I just want to kiss you, man," and
Yeah,
he'd I remember being very moved by the fact that that was a line that River Phoenix had improvised. It wasn't in the script, and
yeah.
I thought
It's a
that was very,
beautiful film.
very brave. Um, oh God, books. Oh, it's always the last thing I've read, to be honest. I've just been reading the Ginger Geezer, which is the biography of Vivian Stanshall from the Bonzo Dog Doodah band,
Okay.
who were um, an amazing surrealist comedy music performance art trio. And a trio? They weren't a trio. Um, one of the most brilliant eccentrics the country's ever produced, and um, I just really like those odd people.
I have to check it out. I haven't heard of it, but I'll give
You
it a
got to
go.
check out the
But
music. Check out the music as well. It's insane, brilliant.
I will do. I'll get some album recs off you.
Yeah.
What's a saying you live by and one that you'd put in the bin?
Do you know, I really love Quentin Crisp's. Don't try and keep up with the Joneses. Drag them down to your level. It's far cheaper.
Is that a live by or a bit? Is that the live by one?
I think you could take that either way. Um, if we go back to the podcast that you and I did, I think try and live as a verb, not a noun.
Yeah, that's a beautiful one. Yeah. What has been the best adventure of your life so far?
God, the whole thing, really.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, the whole thing. It's just like who knows what's around the corner. And I think the important thing is to swim towards it.
yes. Swim, run, whatever.
Yeah, I mean the biggest adventure, like in all honesty, it has been the museum.
Yeah,
Because I uh, very much in that kind of like run towards the sea mentality.
yeah,
When I picked this project up, I didn't know how to set up who knows how to set up a museum.
yeah.
Um, and I just tried everything I could, and I spoke to as many people as I could, and I just went into it with that knowledge that it's like, well, museums exist. Somebody must have set museums up at some point. I'm sure they didn't know how to do it either. So
Well, listen, I mean, it's there and it's there for everyone to enjoy. So, and then I was actually Sue Sanders was on the podcast,
oh,
and she
bless her.
was, and
Love
we
Sue.
we recorded yesterday, and she was saying
Did
how
you? Lovely.
she was saying how someone had initially discussed possibly setting one up back in 2004.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and look how many years it actually took to happen, and
Well, the
you
funny
did.
thing is, I remember them coming to see me when I was editing. I was editor at Gay Times. I was
Yeah,
editor or deputy editor, I can't remember, but oh yeah, I remember that project very well.
yeah.
Jack Gilbert, I think it was.
Yes, but yeah, I mean, look what you achieved all those years later.
Yeah, well, also he had a much they had a much tougher environment to
Yeah,
be
of course,
working
of
in
course.
than I did, and you build you build it on the back of other people's work as well.
Yeah, and that's what we do as a community.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. And
and yeah,
Sue's a total game changer herself.
absolutely, it was a great.
She's
We spent an hour and a half chatting yesterday. Phenomenal.
yeah, she's amazing.
What
So
three words?
nothing but respect for Sue.
No, absolutely phenomenal. What three words would you use to describe you and your origin story?
Loving, lost, and found.
Oh, loving, lost, and found. Loving the poetic nature of those. Let's fast forward a little bit. What exciting things do you have coming up?
Inventing my future.
Oh,
And that's as much as I want to say about that right now, because I'm, I've come to the end of my operational time with
Yeah,
QB. It's been very hard to put my head above the parapet,
yeah,
parapet to get
yeah.
my nose above the water. I don't know.
Same.
There's a metaphor in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, and I now am pausing and assessing where I can bring service, where I can lift people up, and where I can find something that I'm going to enjoy.
Well, my next question is what brings you joy?
I really love just like long evenings talking shite.
I know you love a good dissection
I
chat.
do love a good dissect. I mean, this has brought me joy. This has been lovely, and of course, lovely to talk about yourself.
Yeah. And being able to reflect and take those moments.
But I mean, in all seriousness, what brings me joy? My friends, my family,
Yeah.
my husband, um, and I really love it when you see somebody do more than they thought they could do
Yeah.
or achieve. I really love it. I really get joy from seeing somebody take, um, not take a risk, but rise to a challenge.
Yeah. Same, same, same.
Yeah.
I love seeing people thrive, particularly people I love.
Yeah, and for myself as well,
Yeah.
because um, uh, I'm almost obsessively like if there's a platform, I have to stand on it. Like I have to, I can't not try for something.
Yeah.
And when you pull something off, when the book comes out, when the museum opens, when the magazine publishes, when all of these things, and you're just like, wow, I didn't think I had that in me. Look at it, there it is. That's magnificent.
Absolutely. This podcast is going out to partly celebrate LGBT History Month. And the podcast itself is focusing on people who are striving to make the world a more inclusive place. What would you say to anyone? What practical takeaways would you have for anyone when it comes to creating something inclusive like Queer Britain?
Um, I think that the most important thing is listening to people,
Mm.
making sure that you've reached out as widely as you can and included as many people as you can. Try not to presume that you know what they're going to want or need. Um, and I think the other thing is that I think we on the more liberal side of things, if we have one weakness, and we have many, but if we have one weakness, I would say that it's we're too quick to wag a finger in people's faces and tell them how things are rather
Mm.
than finding out where they've come from and what their story is.
Yes.
So don't
Yeah.
do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I will say one thing as well. I think that we need to make more of an effort to not just be demanding our inclusion, but to be trying to create space for other people.
Mm.
And we have a tendency to um, throw our toys around when we feel like we're not being included. But actually, what we need to be doing is trying to make sure that we are including other people. So it
Yes.
becomes so like look outwards more.
Yeah, absolutely. My final question, Joe, I can't believe we're here already, but what words of encouragement or wisdom do you have for anyone out there to help them get to wherever they're going?
I don't know about wisdom, but I think it would be you are enough.
Yeah.
You're not broken. You're not lacking. You are enough. You are perfect, but focus on how you can help others. God, I'm so worthy.
I love it. Joe, thank you so much.
No, thank you.
I have enjoyed this wordy hour plus with you. I feel like I've learned so much more about you, which is the point of this podcast. I'm so grateful for you, for all that you do, and above all for your friendship, actually. So thank you.
Vice bleeding versa, Neil. Vice bleeding versa. Thank you.
I'll see you soon.
All
Take
right,
care.
darling. Bye.
I absolutely loved this conversation, and you probably heard there's a lot of mutual love between myself and Joe. There was so much I really, really relished hearing about. I loved that glorious anecdote of Joe when he first saw the sea, just dropping everything and running towards it. And I think that really says so much about him. I loved the his how his wordiness, the poetry, and his love of language really shone through, as well as music as well. Love that part of the conversation about the importance of finding joy in stuff. You don't necessarily have to be great at it, but making time for joy. And making time for others as well. The importance of being seen. And Joe really appreciates those moments where people have seen him and believed in him, but also the way that he reflects that back, the way that he really celebrates and uplifts and amplifies the voices of others through his work. But just as he goes around life, I feel that personally. As always, love hearing about his relationship with Mark and those words that he uses to describe himself and his origin story: loving, lost, and found. Really, again, poetic. Joe, you're such a wordsmith. Really exciting to hear what is next for Joe. With ideas around the consultancy and just summing up as looking forward to inventing his future. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. It just speaks to the importance of, reframing your own narrative. There's something out there, and pivoting and flexing can be really, really exciting. It's come up a lot on this podcast. And just those beautiful words again, just more life is much more interesting lived as a verb than a noun. And yeah, just the real essence of who Joe is shining through there. So please do like, subscribe, and share. Do comment if you can. That would be really appreciated. Help spread the word about Pause and Rewind. These amazing stories. We love shining a spotlight on them. And stay tuned for more amazing guests on Pause and Rewind. And get yourself to Queer Britain in Granary Square. Cheers. Take care. Bye.